Brown. This is my mother, Sandra Brown. We are Eastern Band Cherokee. This is our southeastern encampment. We set this up today in honor of the virtual Southeastern Indian Festival that the Portuguese people are putting on. We're honored to be a part of it and participate in it. Me and my mother have been doing this on our own since 2016, but I grew up doing this my entire life, and this is something that she's done for a very long time as well. I am 30 years old, so I've been doing this for a really long time. And we love our culture, we love our heritage, we love our people, we love all of living history type of things. My mother is a figure weaver. She does plant fiber cordage as well, and she's always messing around with plants. And I do feather cakes, I do beadwork. We also do participate in powwow dancing. So, you know, we've been involved in our culture for a very long time, and it's just something that we really love to do and we enjoy it. We do many parts of it. So back behind me is a hunter's bark encampment. This is something that we would set up out in the hunting territories long ago. We used it to gather plants with, or if we went out to gather hunting materials or anything that we needed to do. Men and women both used them. Men and women hunted as well in Cherokee culture. So we would set these up out in the hunting territories, and we would leave them standing for anyone from that nation to use. You were allowed to use it if you needed to. It was just for a night or two stay. It wasn't something that we permanently lived in. And this one's made out of bark. It's cypress bark. Now cypress is a tree that's grown in the swamp, that grows in the swampy areas. So when it gets wet, the bark swells and it closes up those gaps even more. On the back of this bark encampment, you can put a whole end cap piece on it, or you can add more bark or put bark on the top and really enclose it very well. Down inside, you lay your hides, and that's where you would sleep. You would put your fire out in the front, and that's where you would cook or to stay warmer. You would have your fire right out there in front. And this is just one type of structure that we would use. Now, Cherokee people, we did not live in this type of home. This is not our permanent type of home. Our permanent type of home that we would live in was made out of clay walls and bark loaves. And what you would do, how you built those, you would take big posts and put them in a big circle in the ground. And then you would take tree saplings and weave those tree saplings through those posts in the ground. And then you would take bark and latch it onto the top for the roof. Now that was like our winter home. We would stay, and then we would keep our beds in there, kind of like bunk beds in the wall. And that's how Cherokee people lived on a daily basis. But we also had a summer type of home that we would use for the day and for the night to stay cool. And it was set up almost like a front porch. And the back wall of that, they were open on the sides, the roof was open, so the wind could come through, you'd catch a nice breeze. And then on the back wall was clay. And so during the day, if it was getting a little too hot, the men or women would take water and splash it on that wall. And that clay wall would keep it nice and cool. It would keep it around 70 degrees or so. And so that's just a little bit about our homes. Now, Native people all over lived in different types of homes.
Yes. And also, I'm going to tell you a little bit about where Cherokees lived long ago. Before European contact, Cherokees were a vast nation of people, and one of the largest nations covered a portion of 8 states. It was North Georgia, North Alabama, North and South Carolina, almost the entire state of Tennessee, almost the entire state of Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia. It was a large portion of the mountainous areas and maybe the foothills of the mountains that Cherokee peoples love to live in. Cherokees lived in the area called the Great Smoky Mountains, and still do today. And the Great Smoky Mountains being their homeland where they originated. This is the origin stories of the Cherokee people. There's stories that have been taught, or theories that have been taught, that Native people came across a land bridge in the Bering Strait theory. And that was just one theory that existed. Actually, they only dug down so far, and that time period that they dug to was 12,500 years. But when they began to dig a little deeper in areas across the U.S., they realized and saw that Native people had been here much, much longer. There are several sites that by far predate the Bering Strait theory. And so the Cherokee people had this area, the Great Smoky Mountains. That's where we are today filming, is in our homeland, the Great Smoky Mountains. And the Cherokees in their homeland are said to have lived here for thousands and thousands of years. Well, the Cherokee people actually believe that this is where they originally came from. There are ancient stories that go back in the long ago time, tell of like the first man and first woman. And there's even a place that they call the Navel, and their mother towns that they can take you to this day. So the Cherokee people believe that the Great Smoky Mountains are their original homelands. Also, linguists teach that the Cherokees are possibly descended down from the Iroquois nations, which are the people up in the northeastern part of the United States. But the Cherokee people now believe, and truly believe, that this is also a theory that was taught by linguists. It's not something that is really true. If you believe traditional ways, then you believe in those stories and the origin stories of what they teach you. And so these Great Smoky Mountains in today's time, when you visit the visitor centers and you listen to the rangers there, they talk about how old the Great Smoky Mountains are, that they have been here for a long, long time. They're one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world. And at one time, the mountains here were 10,000 feet. And the rangers teach and tell that here, the Great Smoky Mountains is the seed bed for all the seeds of North America. And so if it is where the seeds all came from, the Cherokees believe also that that proves that it is the origin and the original homelands of the Cherokee people. Many of their ancient stories, they can take you to the actual site, the Navel. They can take you to where first man and first woman lived. They can take you to those mother towns. And so this homeland, this Great Smoky Mountains, has been the original homeland of the Cherokees for a long, long time. In today's time, there are the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, the Western Band, the United Kituwa Band, and they live in Oklahoma. Those two, the United Kituwa and the Western Band, live in Oklahoma. And the Eastern Band live in the original homelands of the Cherokee, a portion of it, a very small portion. It's located in the state of North Carolina. It is the only federally recognized Native nation in the state of North Carolina. And they live in these two different places because of the removal that happened to all southeastern peoples long ago. Andrew Jackson was the president in the 1830s. He actually fought in battles with the British and the Americans. The Cherokees fought on the side of the American revolutionaries in the 1700s. And Andrew, in 1776, Andrew Jackson was a soldier at that time, later became a president, and his life was actually spared by a Cherokee man named Wahlalah that fought along beside him. But President Andrew Jackson enacted, while he was president, the Indian Removal Act. Actually, Cherokees fought this in Supreme Court. They won it. They won twice in Supreme Court to not be removed. And President Andrew Jackson defied the Supreme Court and said, if the Supreme Court wants the Cherokees to stay, let them enforce it. And so he enacted the Indian Removal Act, defied those Supreme Court rulings, which he is the only president to defy a U.S. Supreme Court ruling, and he did it not once but twice. And so all southeastern peoples east of the Mississippi River were removed and taken to the Indian country at the time. It was called, it is the state of Oklahoma. That's why you have the western band of Cherokees, the Creek people that live in Oklahoma, the Choctaw people that live in Oklahoma. A lot of those nations have nations in their original homelands, and then also out west in Oklahoma because they were removed. The most known were the Cherokees, the Creek, the Choctaw, the Seminole, and the Chickasaw. However, there were many other nations, smaller nations, that were included in that removal. The Yuchi, the Catawba, different ones that were included in that. And many, many, many Native people lost their lives and froze to death and starved and that sort of thing during that removal time. However, Native people are still here and learning ways to thrive in today's time. And so that's a little bit about where Cherokees lived, their homeland long ago, and where they are today.
Now, has she said that each Native nation, there was many different Native nations. Long ago, there was many, many more than there are today. In today's time in the United States, there's over 500 different federally recognized Native nations, not just in the United States today. That's not including Canada or down in Mexico or anything like that. But there's over 500 different Native nations in the U.S. today. Now, each one of those Native nations speak a different language. They all have their own different types of ceremonies, their own different way of dressing from a long time ago. And I'm just going to teach you a little bit of the Cherokee language, just a little bit. So in my language, you would say Shio for hello. Oshigwaja, how are you? This is a bear, this is the Dona. Yanshi, buffalo, Awi, deer. Eji, mother. Adoda, father. Usti is baby. And then I'll count for you a little bit. So Shogwo, Tali, Zoe, Nungi, and Hishki. That's just a little bit of our language, like a very, very tiny bit of it. There was a time in our history that Native people were not allowed to speak their language at all. And it was a time when people just did not teach their kids the language like they did long ago. It was around boarding school time periods when all Native people had to go to boarding schools when they were little kids. They were actually scared to teach their kids the language because they might get in trouble for it. So around that time, a lot of the languages were lost. We still try to hang on to ours over here in the Eastern Band. We have many different classes that enrolled members and their family members can take and participate in. We also have a full immersion school. That's where, like, I think it's through, it's like from little bitty babies, pre-K, all the way to 6th grade. You can go to that school, and each year they try to add another grade. And once you go to that school, you just speak Cherokee only inside that school, so that way we're trying to preserve our language and bring it back. But all over the continent, Native people spoke different languages. There's no way that I could go up to a Choctaw person or a Lakota person or a Navajo person and tell them Shio and them understand me. It would be a complete different language. So we also had a written language. Sequoia, we had our written language so that way Sequoia made a written language so we could learn to write in our language as well, not just speak it. So we also have something called the syllabary, and Sequoia made that a very long time ago for us to help us read and write in our language.
Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about men and women's roles. So in today's time, in our modern societies that we live in a world that is patriarchal. That means it is run by the men. But most Native nations, but especially Cherokees, were matriarchal people. That means that it was run by the women. The women owned the homes, the children belonged to them, all the belongings belonged to the women, and the women had very, very important roles. They made very big decisions, and so we had women war chiefs, we had chiefs, we had war women, we had beloved women, we had our clan mothers, we had many, many roles that women played and were not left out of anything. In fact, it's documented proof that when the Europeans were here trying to negotiate treaties and that sort of thing, they did not understand why the women were allowed in and had such a big voice with the Cherokee people, and would make comments about it and documented statements about how involved the women were. There's stories of women chiefs. Many roles that the women played were very, very important. The women, men or women, one is not more important than the other, but the society was more so run by the women. We had 7 clans. There was at one time many more clans, but really not just a few hundred years back, the clans got smaller and smaller to where it was down to 7 clans. It's the Wolf Clan, the Paint Clan, the Blue Clan, the Deer Clan, the Bird Clan, Wild Potato, and Long Hair. My daughter's helping me. So 7 clans, and every one of those clans had a clan mother, and the clan mother kind of took care of and was in charge of the clan. Cherokees actually had clan law, so that when something happened and some wrong was done against a clan, they would have gatherings and meetings, and the women would get together, decide what action to take. Maybe something was done wrong, someone killed another person. They would decide amongst the women what would happen. They would meet with the chiefs and the different people and the warriors, and then the men would carry out what the women had decided upon. So everyone was important. Not one was more important than the other, the men or the women. Men were the warriors, the providers, the chiefs also, and took care of the people. And so men and women's roles were equally important. You can't have one without the other, but the women are the life givers. Women have the children and take care of the family, and they are the root. And so women were held in high regard and great respect. It is said among some of the Native people that men go into the mountains and they cry and they pray for their visions, and women are born with them. Out in today's society, they would call that women's intuition and that sort of thing. So women are very important. This is part of the reason why me and my daughter continued this camp, to show that women are strong and important in the Native culture, and that we also can do these traditional things and go out and teach and speak and continue the culture on. And so men and women's roles, just so important, both of them. Not one was above the other. For example, we have a stomp dance, and that's a great example of how, when you do a stomp dance, how the men and women play equal roles.
So, just like she was saying, stomp dance is a very old ceremony that was done all over the Southeast. But the Cherokee people have stomp, and I participate in stomp when it's going on. And stomp dance is a ceremony that we've been doing for thousands and thousands of years. It's very cool that in today's time you can go to a ceremony or a stomp dance or a ceremony in any native country, native reservation or any native sites going on, but you can go there and hear very old songs that have been sung on this continent for a very long time. Now, stomp dance is something that you have to have men and women for. So the women make the music and make the beat, and the men sing the songs. We couldn't do one without the other. There's no way that the women could do it all by themselves, and there's no way that the men could do stomp dance by themselves. It's definitely relied on each other. And so that's just one example of something that we use both men and women for. Stomp dance is a ceremony we do at nighttime. Once it gets dark, you go out and you have the fire, and there's men and women. The women wear, they do tie turtle shells to boot leather, and they put shakers in there, like little pebbles and stuff, inside the turtle shells. The ones that I use have 13 shells on each leg, so they're very, very heavy. That's one of the reasons why the men have to sing the songs, because those are so heavy. It's such a workout. You lace those up and tie them onto your calves here, and then you just stomp and you make the music, and the men sing the songs. And that's just one ceremony that we have. We have very, very many different ceremonies, but that's one that's still done today that we definitely participate in.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the ways that we use plants and different things. So just think about, with our encampments and our plants and our food, imagine yourself in the woods long ago. Everything had to come from there. You didn't have a grocery store. You didn't have a Walmart to go and pick things up. Everything had to come from the earth. And so, like we use our bark today, we also went out and gathered food, all different kinds of food. In today's time, Cherokee people still eat those foods. It's things like wishy, which is a mushroom, and ramps, which is a wild onion, and sochan, which is a green. And they hunted, hunting and gathering foods for thousands of years. Cherokees still go out today and gather ramps and many, many different plants. All the medicine that Native people had to come from the earth. All kinds of plants that we use, like yellow root. It grows along the creek banks. We are actually, you can probably hear it, on a creek bank, a river bank. We actually, a creek borders here and a river borders there. And all along this branch and this river grows a plant called yellow root. Yellow root is good medicine for your stomach. It's good for your gums and your throat. It sounds like I might need some now. But yellow root is a very good plant. It's very useful. But all over these mountains are food and plants and different things that you can gather. Our homes were made from the earth. And so that's how we lived our lives. We gathered everything in a season, everything that comes right, the strawberries. We have an ancient story about the wild strawberry and how it's a plant of love. Cherokees believe that strawberry plant. It's a favorite story of my daughter Wahlalah since she was a little bitty girl, is the first strawberries, and how they were a gift to a man and woman who were arguing. And because the woman found these strawberries and smelled them, she forgot all about why she was mad at her man, and she went back and gave him strawberry plants. And so all of these foods, it is said that as far as medicine goes, Native people or Cherokee people had a cure in the plants for every illness that existed before European contact. When Europeans came here, they brought diseases like smallpox and diphtheria and cholera and diseases like that that Cherokees had never ever heard of. And so some of those diseases wiped out large portions of Native people long ago when the Europeans first started coming here. So some of those illnesses they couldn't heal, but prior to that, and it's also said that every plant, every tree, everything here has a purpose for healing if we just knew it. If we were only wise enough to know what that plant was here to do, and to use it correctly. Now, you don't just go out and break off a plant. There's prayers that goes with that. Before you go and gather anything, there's special ways to do it. Even on hunting, there's special ways. Like Cherokee people had hunting songs that they would sing the night before. Special ceremonies, scratching ceremonies that they would do before a hunt so that it would be successful. And this is why they knew that to hunt an animal, the animal was giving up its life. And so it was a sacred thing. Native people believed that if you pray over something and then on the hunt that animal crosses your path or you cross its path, it was meant to be, because it was sent there by the Creator for food. And so when you kill it, you pray and do ceremony before, and even right after, you pray and do ceremony. And you use everything you possibly can. Obviously, there's things you can't use, like the certain insides or the eyes or certain things that you couldn't use. Well, all you did with those things is you gathered those things and you went off to the side of the village and you put them on like a compost pile and for composting. So you wouldn't use a whole fish to fertilize your garden. You would use the parts of the fish, the head, the tail, the insides, and you would use that on your compost and put that in your gardens for fertilize. And so hunting and gathering foods and plants was always done in an honorable way, a prayerful way.
So I wanted to talk to you about how we're dressed today. This is around the 1700s time period. This is a wool skirt. It's made out of wool. We have leggings as well. And our shirts, they're nice and long sleeve, very covered up. Because in the 1700s, that was after European contact. And back then they were taught to cover up a little more than they did beforehand. Now, before European contact, we would have been using plant fibers that we were weaving, different plants. There's about 30 different plant fibers. That's what my mother likes to do, is do plant fiber cordage. And there's about 30 different plants that we can weave and turn into like a cotton, like how you do cotton, how they use cotton in today's time. You can do it like that. This is a belt made out of plant fiber cordage that she weaves and breaks down. Those are a pair of shoes. And we were also using leather, like animal hide,
let's show them a little bit of our stuff on our
camp.
You can see it. This is a long bow. This is actually my bow. It's made out of a plant called a tree called ironwood or Osage orange, they call it. My husband got this bow for me long ago. We don't keep the strings on our bows because it messes them up. We string them right before we're going to use them. You bend them and put the string on. And so this is obviously a tool for hunting. Also, here's another bow that Wahlah's cousin made. He makes these bows even still in today's time. This one's made out of hickory. And so that's some of our bows.
This is a blowgun. This is made out of river cane. It's hollowed out all the way through. And you would use a little blow dart. And this is for hunting small game. This would be hunting like rabbits, squirrels, turkeys even, small birds. And you would just get really close if they're far, a good distance away. You put your blow dart down in there and you blow, and it's a tool. It's a hunting tool for hunting small game.
Now on this particular hide, I have a bunch of spoons. Many, many, many spoons. They're made out of wood. They're carved. Remember I said we had to go out and get everything we needed from nature. So we had spoons. We also had knives. Wahlalah will show you knives.
These are different knives that we have that we would use long ago. This one's made out of, the handle's made out of elbow bone, and this one's made out of rock. This one's here, and this is a skin. And we had everything that we needed. Native people long ago had everything that they needed. Over here's a mask. It's not complete, but we like it that way. It's just carved out of wood. We would use these in our homes. We would use these in different ceremonies with dances and things like that.
I'm going to show you a flute and a rattle. We had drums, flutes, and rattles. These are musical instruments. And then we have drums that we would also use. Cherokee people used water drums. Why don't you show them the ball sticks, Wahlalah?
These are ball sticks. I know you guys over there in Porch Creek, they play stickball as well, but all southeastern Native people played stickball. It was something that the men did. It was really a long time ago. It's how they would go to war. It wasn't just a game. Now when European people came over, they seen them doing this, and because they're using two sticks and a little ball, they believed that they were playing a game and there was a goal. But it was actually how we would settle disputes against other Native nations or surrounding our territory. So say there was a hunting ground that the Creek people and the Cherokee people both wanted to hunt in. Well, instead of going to war and losing our warriors and having a bunch of deaths, we might take it up with stickball instead. And what it is, you get out in a big open field, and they put tree saplings on each side of the field, and those are your goals. And there would be many. Sometimes the stickball games would last for days. It was very brutal. It was a full contact battle game, as in today's time, but it was full contact. No padding, no shoes, and there was no boundaries. So if the ball went over there in the woods, that's where they were going to get the ball. It doesn't matter where the ball goes. They chase it and they get it, and they score a point. They run through those tree saplings, and that's 1 point. And it was very brutal. You might end up with a broken arm or broken leg or a big knot on your head, or beat up a little bit, but nobody died in stickball. Very rarely. Sometimes, occasionally it might happen, but it wasn't like actually going to war.
So this is our camp. We really hope you've enjoyed our program. We have a time limit, so we have to end our program, but this is our our camp, we have many animal skins and many things in it. We are, as Wahlalah said, honored to be a part of this virtual festival. We hope you've learned a little bit. Hopefully, we'll be back with you in person next year. Wahlalah, would you like to close out the
Yeah,
program?
so in the Cherokee language, we have no word for goodbye. To us, when you say goodbye, that is the end. And that's like, I'll never see you again. So for us, me and my mother will say, big dog, go hunt me, which means we'll see each other again soon. Skink. Thank you.